Now on YTV, Little Sisters, a major part of a guiding family.
Girl Guides have gathered around campfires for almost 80 years, celebrating their hard-won freedom to pursue adventure in a man's world. But 1989 belongs to their little sisters, the Brownies. Early guides never had any peace from their little sisters until 1914, when the junior section was formed for that reason. In 1917, the blue uniform gave way to the brown. The Brownies were here to stay. And stay they have, growing into the nation's biggest youth movement. Today, Britain has more than 370,000 Brownies. Past members, including television presenter Sue Cook and the advice columnist Marge Proops.
You know, I don't want to give the impression that I think being a guide and being a Brownie is all about doing good and being goody-goody two-shoes, because it isn't.
My memories are hazy as to exactly why I joined. I think one of the reasons might have been I fancied the head choir boy at the church to which the Brownie guides were attached. So I used to be able to see him every month in the church parade.
This pack in Waltham, near Grimsby, are about to come under the scrutiny of one of the earliest surviving Brownies. Dorothy, only 5 in 1922, joined a pack she'd seen over her garden wall in Cottingham, near Hull.
Well, I used to watch them in the gardens in the summertime playing, and always thought that how I'd love to join them. And of course, when I was 5, I couldn't get there fast enough. The real aim of a Brownie is to help other people. And that is something that goes through the whole of the Brownie life. Lend a hand, always.
Dorothy from Scunthorpe now made her Brownie promise 67 years ago. She's curious about today's new Brownies.
This is Katie Blandon from Francis Ennifer, and they're wanting to be a Brownie guide.
Now, do you know your Brownie guide law? Would you like to say your Brownie guide law?
A Brownie guide thinks of others before herself and does a good turn every day.
Francis?
A Brownie guide thinks of others before herself and does a good turn every day.
Good girl. Now, do you know your Brownie guide promise? Do you know that if you make your promise, you must always do your best to carry it out everywhere, but especially at home? Would you like to say your Brownie guide promise?
I promise that I will do my best to do my duty to God, to serve the Queen and help other people and to keep Brownie guide law.
Good girl. Francis?
I promise that I will do my best to do my duty to God, to serve the Queen and to help other people and to keep the Brownie guide law.
Good girl. I present you with your Brownie promise badge. It shows now that you're a real Brownie. You've got lots of sisters all over the world because you belong to the guiding family. Twist me and turn me and show me the elf. I looked in the water and there saw
myself.
Right, now you can go back to your sister. Now we'll give our new Brownies a Brownie welcome.
As Dorothy followed the trail of Brownies and guides in the 1980s, she found herself within a stone's throw of this house in Derbyshire, birthplace just 100 years ago of the woman behind much of what happens in the movement today. Olive Soames was destined, as Lady Baden-Powell, to become a legend in her own time. She was and remains the only woman to have held the title World Chief Guide. She was born here at Stubbing Court near Chesterfield on the 22nd of February in 1889, though she could hardly have called any place home after travelling the world, transforming the guide movement. Olive was sheltered from life more than most children of the time, yet wherever she went for the guides, she seemed at ease with the youngest guide or Brownie, or with members of the royal family who shared the uniform. Thanks to Olive, the guides were said to have become a real family. She shared the same birthday as her husband, Lord Baden-Powell, who'd started the Boy Scouts. 11,000 scouts at the first rally in 1909 found in their midst a handful of girls demanding equal rights. The Girl Guides were formed the very next year, followed in 1914 by the first Brownies, known briefly as Rosebuds. Lady BP called them Little Sisters. Everyone called her Mother to Millions. Millions which embraced Marge Proops as leader of Daffodil Patrol. And Sue Cook of Chaffinch Patrol won more badges than even she'd remembered.
I was a bit embarrassed, really. It was a sort of secret life I had. It was a separate guide outfit from school, so nobody really at school knew I belonged to the Guides at all. It was my sort of Friday secret. And I collected all these badges just because I loved doing it, and I loved the outdoors a lot. I loved climbing trees and camping and cooking outdoors and things, and I found myself with this rather embarrassingly large collection of badges on my arm.
Why were you so secretive about it?
It was just nice to have a separate life, really, I think. And it was a sort of suburban place where we lived. It was 15 miles outside London, so being an outdoor girl was fairly unusual, but I just adored climbing trees and sort of sitting in fields and thinking a lot, which seemed a bit soppy to some of my schoolmates, I think.
Well, it was my mum, actually, who kind of pushed me and urged me to become a Brownie, because I was a publican's daughter, and the pub was in the East End of London, and my mother was a rather suburban lady, and all her sisters had daughters who were in the Guides and the Brownies, and she wanted me to be the same, me and my sister. So she pushed us into the Brownies. But once we got there, we loved it. Absolutely loved it.
I just loved the climbing the trees and the naughtiness you could get up to. I mean, we set fire to a tree. The tester was coming round to test my fire-making ability, and the fire was getting a bit out of control. And this is another thing I learnt through the Guides. I was frying some sausages or something, and the fire was getting a bit out of control, so I got a glass of water and chucked it on the fire, which of course was the worst thing to do. Instantly, 7-foot flames, you know, catching fire to the branches of the tree above. And luckily, I managed to put it out by the time the tester came around the corner to look at my patrol and what we were doing.
And Sue still passed her test, then went on to win the Guide's highest award, the Queen's Badge, symbol of the movement's links with the royal family. Queen Mary met this Brownie in 1917. Princess Mary became president of the Guides in 1920. The royal connection continues unbroken, but how important is it today?
It's very important, I think, for a number of reasons, but to begin with, it was the King Edward VII who encouraged BP in his scouting at the very beginning in 1909. And since then, the royal family and successive kings, and now the Queen, have been interested and involved. The Queen Mother used to be, when she was Duchess of York, and indeed before she was married, she was a district commissioner in Glamis in the Guides a way back. And then she became a patron when she became Queen. And now she's still patron, and when the present Queen became Queen, she was made a patron. But she was very involved in Guides as a girl. She was a guide from about 1937. And then she was a ranger, a sea ranger, and obviously enjoyed it very much. And her sister, our present president, Princess Margaret, was a Brownie, and then a guide, and then a sea ranger too. And she's very interested in guiding. She has very distinct recollections of her time in guiding. And her daughter, Lady Sarah, became a Brownie as soon as she was old enough to become a Brownie. And I think Princess Margaret had something to do with that. And of course, Princess Anne became a Brownie and then a guide. I think her mother had something to do with that. I believe when the royal family went to Windsor during the war, that the Queen, the then Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, and the rest of their guide company were out in the grounds, and the King decided he wanted to go and see what they were doing in guiding, because he took a great interest, as his wife did. And he came across the guider, apparently asleep under the bushes, and afterwards he challenged her with this, and she said, no, she was just hiding so that the girls could track her. I don't know who was speaking the truth.
A long-standing relationship that's obviously important to the royal family. But what does it mean to the Brownies and Guides?
I think it means a great deal. I think it means that it doesn't matter who you are. You are members of the movement, which is a large sisterhood. At the moment, we've got over 8.5 million members throughout the world. And it doesn't matter whether you live in a slum or in a palace. You're all members of this one sisterhood of girls.
I will return to you.
Far from any palace or slum, from any town or city, Brownies and Guides have always headed for the open country, laying trails, testing endurance and initiative, or just enjoying the freedom. In those early days, anything too adventurous would have been frowned on. After all, this is a movement born of a time when girls weren't even supposed to show an ankle, let alone scale rock faces. That blow for equality in 1909 gave girls their opportunity to show that anything the boys could do, they could do too. Yet it's only in more recent times that guides and rangers, the senior ranks, have taken on the more hazardous outdoor pursuits in places like Stanage Edge in Derbyshire, where Dorothy's eyes are opened to a world beyond the reach of her generation. As the Chief Commissioner points out, times have changed.
We're offering them abseiling, canoeing, camping, skiing, anything that they want to do. You can do anything in guiding.
Good, well done.
We have to find an expert to help us if we can't help them with it ourselves.
Did you climb when you were in guiding?
No.
At all? You didn't?
No, we had no opportunity whatsoever. No.
They seem to certainly enjoy it today. We've even got a county commissioner who's climbed. We had a party of rangers climbing, and she then went and did the same climb that she'd done, that they'd done.
She's very brave. I don't know whether I would.
Well, I'm sure you'd manage. I'm sure you'd manage.
Right, you want to get your left foot on that obvious foothold in the groove when you get up it. Yeah. That's it. Good, well done.
Well, I think they're incredibly brave, the canoeing particularly. I think they're absolutely marvellous. It's fascinated me. I think at this age as well, it's a wonderful opportunity for them. You know, if we'd had the chance, I don't say I would have liked to do it, but some of them would, no doubt. It's wonderful.
Rangers demonstrating exciting times in store for today's Brownies, but for the moment, life for them is more sedate.
We make things, play games, help one another. We learn how to cook and clean things. It's about helping and you're lending a hand. Well, people talked to me and said it was very nice that you played games and made things. So I put my name down and came to Brownies and go on trails, things like that.
I just remember it as being good, and the good thing was being part of a group. And I think that this was the most, and still is, the most important aspect of guiding and Brownieing, is that you belong to a little group and you are very much a part of it, and your little group belongs to a big movement and you're part of that. And I think that that is terribly important and something that a lot of kids today are missing out on. And I think if there were more parents like my parents who urged me to continue to be a Brownie and a guide in due course, then there would be less delinquency, less evil, in fact.
It's all kinds of things you can aim for. And also it teaches you to be self-sufficient, I found. I learned an awful lot of things in the guides that I wouldn't have learned at home, just looking at the badges. It may seem silly just to have all these badges, but actually I did learn to cook. I did learn to make a fire outdoors and all that sort of thing. I learnt needlewomanship. I hated sewing at home. I really loathed it. But actually I learnt to sew. Through the guides I did teaching. I looked after children. I looked after old people and did their gardens. you know, you could live a really full life and have lots of purpose and have good fun with your friends at the same time. You didn't need anything else.
A campfire gathering with brownies there by special invitation soon has Dorothy recalling old times.
Mine was quite a short one. It just said, I promise on my honour to do my best to God and the King, to help other people every day, especially those at home. So that was a bit shorter than yours, wasn't it? And we had a king. So that's a long time ago, isn't it?
Right, Dorothy, do you want to show the brownies your brownie badge?
Yes, I'll show them mine. This is a very old one. That's over 60 years old. And that's a gold colour.
Did you go to Guy?
Yes. Yes, I was a guide. And I had a pack of brownies, all mine. 50 brownies. The children are the same. They ask the same questions, exactly. They want to know. They certainly perhaps ask more questions than we would have dared to do. In my day, you weren't allowed to ask too many questions. When I see children today behaving very badly, I think, well, they would have learnt something had they been in a Brownie organisation. We were learning something that was going to be of use to us later. Even laying a table is something that everyone, as they grow older, needs to do. And so that was a beginning. I can remember very well signalling was something that I was passionately fond of. And I think even to this day I can remember most of it. And we did send messages. If we wanted something, we sent a message, even a very short message. But nevertheless, we signalled this message, and in that way you learnt the alphabet and, you know, very small things. And it was always a fascination for me.
Military-style inspections and lines of tents spring to mind when guide camps are mentioned. The movement's origins have a military basis. BP's training for Boy Scouts was based on his army service. But laying trails of sticks and stones is almost a thing of the past.
That's some of it. It's about, you know, laying trails and going to camp and having fun and so on. But I think that the main thing is this whole group thing that I was talking about earlier, the vital importance of belonging and of being part of society that is a good part of society. You know, I don't want to give the impression that I think being a guide and being a brownie is all about doing good and being goody-goody two-shoes, because it isn't. They're kids and they're wild and they're noisy and they have fun and they want to have fun, so they should. But it is also about a basic fundamental part of human condition, of being together.
Sisters together, yet Scouts and Guides remain apart, except for special events. At least one country is considering amalgamation. Is it time to stop discrimination?
No, I wouldn't think so. I don't belong to the school which believes that men and women are the same. They have a right to equal opportunities and equal chances in life, but men are not like women and women are not like men, and heaven forbid they ever should be.
I think it's nice for them to compete together now and then, but I think the actual packs and troops should be separate, because your friends are the same sex up to the age of 16. You don't really, your chums aren't, as a girl, your chums aren't usually boys, and as a boy, your chums aren't usually girls. So I think you can have much more fun if you keep them separate and just, say, getting together for, say, church parades, special occasions, competitions, that sort of thing.
You have a daughter. Are you going to encourage her to be a
Oh,
brownie
yes,
and a guide?
yes, because I'm sure she'd have fun. It's not a goody-goody thing, as Marge said. It's fun. And I'd have no hesitation. And I wouldn't make her join if she didn't want to. But that would be to do with the kind of personalities that might be in the pack. Maybe she didn't get on with them, but I think otherwise there's guaranteed fun in the brownies and the guides.
There's been no stopping brownies nationwide preparing for their 75th birthday. Each area, like North Lincolnshire and South Humberside, having a theme.
We have chosen to do the circus, and all the brownies will be dressing up in different things that they do in the circus, from elephants to clowns, acrobats, swords, swallows, you name it, they'll try to do it.
The Brownies, like all youth movements, have seen their numbers fall nationally. It's put down mainly to a decline in birth rate and a shortage of adult leaders. There were more guides and Brownies in Britain in 1980 than at any other time, well above the 950,000 mark. But then schools were bursting at the seams too. Once the population boom effect had peaked, the guides' numbers began the slide to today's level of 750,000. Despite the fall, the Chief Commissioner believes all is not lost.
We've kept our percentage of the female population as members, but I personally don't think that's good enough, and we are going for trying to move into areas where we aren't at the moment. We're in some areas where there are ethnic minorities or in the very poor inner cities, and we have got some companies and packs in these areas, but not enough. I mean, every girl in this country is not able to choose to be a Brownie or a guide because there aren't enough units or adult leaders to take them in, and that's what I want to try to see, that any girl who knows about it and wants to still join can join.
Words which would have gladdened the heart of Lady BP, the mother to millions who opened up the movement to young women in countries around the world, 108 at the last count. She'd have been even more delighted with the latest addition to her family, a new generation of junior guides.
This is Diane, and this is Grace, and they are rainbows. And rainbows are the newest section in the Girl Guide Association. There was a need for children younger than Brownie age, and so we have rainbows, which are 5 to 7. And as you can see, they wear a tabard, and they have their own promise.
There's a final irony behind the rainbow's arrival. The Brownies only became Brownies because their elder sisters got fed up of dragging them along to guide meetings for 4 years. The rainbows had to fight even longer for their place in the movement.
In Ulster, they'd been going for 20 years, and so we eventually recognised them. We did have some underground on the mainland of Great Britain as well, you know, daffodils here and stoat somewhere else and bunnies somewhere else, but now they're all anything they like to call themselves under the rainbow.
I think it's the foundation of a person's character. I think it's formed in those days, and I really do believe that the Brownies teach you an awful lot. They teach you love and kindness to people and to animals, and I really believe that if we had more Brownies growing up, there would be more kindness and love in the world. I really do believe that.
We are the red men, tall and straight, with our feathers and war paint. How wow, how wow, we're the men of the olden cow. All of us are red men, feathers in our head men, down among the dead men. Bow wow, bow wow. We have come from wars and war, reading by our numbers was. How wow, how wow, we're the men of the olden cow. All of us are red men, feathers in our head men, down among the dead men. How wow, how wow. They serve from the sea, from the hills, from the sky. All is well, safely rest, God is nigh.
Next Friday at 6:30, meet the characters of Hollywood Sports. Then it's your turn to put pen to paper and become a soap scriptwriter.